why. Oh, there's the recording. We'll talk about the what, the why, and the how of a theory of change. We'll have some time for questions and discussion. And then we'll have an opportunity to put you all in small groups, and hopefully you all can start to get to know each other, talk a little bit about your projects, and begin to flesh out some of the details for your theories of change. Anna, can you go to the next slide? Our learning objectives today are to understand the components, the purpose, and benefits of creating a theory of change, to learn how to develop your own theory of change for your Massachusetts Community Health and Healthy Aging Fund funded project, and to share with and learn from your peers and to form connections through our onboarding work. So, welcome and introductions. I think you all had a chance to meet some of our evaluation team as part of the first onboarding webinar, but we wanted to give a refresher and also introduce our team members that weren't able to join, including myself. So I'll introduce myself and then I'll pass it to my team members. My name is Megan Guptill. I'm an Associate Director of Research and Evaluation at Health Resources in Action, and I am a member of the evaluation team for the funds. And I will pass it to Hannah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Hannah Carliner. I am the evaluation lead for the funds and also a director in the research and evaluation department at HRIA. I'll pass to Stephanie.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Stephanie Walker. I'm a senior research associate with Health Resources in Action, and I am part of the funds evaluation team. And I will pass to Ariel.
Hi, everyone. My name's Ariel. I'm a research associate at HRIA and part of the evaluation team for MACHHAF. And I will pass to Pri if she's on.
Hi, everyone. I'm Pri Rana. I'm a senior research analyst here at HRIA, part of the evaluation team, and have been on this project for a bit. Yeah, I'll pass it back to Hannah and Megan.
Thanks, everyone. You all will get to know us and see our names in your email a lot more over the next year. We just wanted to do a quick introduction. So we are in the middle of Cohort 3 onboarding. Today is looking at the theory of change, which is kind of asking what's the big idea of your project. The next webinar will be focusing on developing a work plan, which will have the question of what's your to-do list. And the third and final onboarding webinar will be about developing an evaluation plan. How will you know that you're getting those things done that you've listed in your theory of change and your work plan? Excuse me. Some of these topics might be new to you, and to others, you might have done all of them before and feel really comfortable developing these materials. If it's not new to you, we hope this is an opportunity to learn a little bit more about how the funds utilizes these tools, and also to get to know your fellow cohort members. And I would encourage you in small breakout rooms, if it's something you're comfortable with, you can even provide a little bit of peer mentorship to your fellow cohorts. So we definitely want to create a space that feels welcoming and useful to all, regardless of your experience with these types of documents. Go to the next one. And then finally, for the housekeeping side of today, just a refresher about the different activities and their due dates. This is in the slide deck that got emailed to everybody. So if you need to go back and reference it, you do have a copy of it. But just as a reminder that for each of these 3 onboarding webinars, we'll ask you to submit a draft of the tool that we're talking about. So today, we'll ask that you submit a draft theory of change by October 18th. And then we'll provide you feedback on that draft with a final submission of all three, the theory of change, the work plan, and the evaluation plan due on February 21st, 2025. So some time to develop those. And with that, I will pass it to Hannah to start talking about theories of change.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here today. So I'm just going to start with a bit of background on what is a theory of change and why are we doing this, having you do this webinar today. So a theory of change is a comprehensive description and illustration of how and why a desired change is expected to happen in a particular context. So for you all, it's how your MACHHAF funded initiative will lead to the desired goals being achieved. And so it illustrates the connections between your visions and your goals with the activities that you plan to do and then your outcomes. So really in writing your application and getting started on your project, you already have the components of a theory of change at your fingertips. A theory of change just really helps you lay them out and make sure that you're really clear on the logical steps that flow between them, and that you're really clear on your goals and the outcomes that you think you will be able to accomplish within the time span of your grant. And then on top of that, it provides an illustration. So it helps you see it all on one page, and it helps you share it with your colleagues. So developing a theory of change is a process designed to sort of help you work with your partners and each other and continue to revise it over time as things change. Developing a theory of change is essentially the process, and this is a quote from some other evaluation colleagues, but it's a process of making explicit collective assumptions about how the change will happen. So in other words, making your thinking visible. So the process of articulating the theory of change helps ensure that everyone involved in this social change effort understands and is aligned in your strategic intent. So it helps document visible thinking. It's also very helpful. You're going to be working on this project, most of you, for a long time. And you're here because your projects were very ambitious, and they're all focused on big level policy systems, environmental change, and they're focused on sort of principles and values around health and racial and age equity. And so especially with complicated projects like that, a theory of change helps you sort of maintain what you intended from the start, and maintain that vision and the activities that will lead to your goals. So in describing what it is, I've already started to describe the why, but just to get a little more specific about that. And by the way, we will be sharing all of these slides again. We already shared most of them, but don't worry about taking detailed notes, because we will be sending them out to you again. So a little more details on the why of create a theory of change. As I was saying, it illustrates these linkages in your planning process. So it illustrates how you actually plan to achieve your goals by linking your strategies and your activities with the goals and the outcomes you plan to achieve. It can also help create stronger programs in your work. It clarifies goals and expectations and allows you and your team and new staff that you're going to hire to keep your eyes on the prize. So like over the 5 years, you'll have people come and go, you'll have partners come and go, but you maintain this visual and you revisit it, and it's a living document, and it helps you sort of maintain that piece where this is what we set out to do, and to always have it in front of you as a visual. A theory of change can also be a very useful communication tool. So it's a visual way to tell the story of your work. It's a way, once you have it on a piece of paper, it's a way to engage new partners and really clearly and succinctly illustrate what you're trying to accomplish with this project. It can also be a great outreach tool for community members that you're trying to engage who aren't maybe official organizational partners. In addition, and why this theory of change is part of this series that we're doing with a theory of change and then a work plan and then an evaluation plan, is that it can help lead you to better work planning. So I know you all already submitted sort of a draft work plan. These documents can feed into each other. So when you're developing your theory of change, you can start with your application and your short work plan and sort of pull those in, because then the theory of change helps you helps you illustrate these high level strategies, activities, and values that will help you then flesh out additional components of your work plan. So it's sort of a way to cross-check each other and make sure that everything you're listing is reflected in your theory of change, and everything in your theory of change is also reflected as an activity in your work plan. Likewise, a theory of change leads to better evaluation. And so when you're developing your evaluation plan, you will be referring to your theory of change and then your work plan and sort of laying your evaluation plan on top of that. So the work that you're doing is a reflection of how you have described that change will happen through your theory of change. And then your evaluation will happen on top of the work that you have said that you're doing. So, so the components and the pieces that you'll evaluate to say, are we accomplishing the goals from our theory of change, are part of the activities that you're doing that are in your work plan. And in particular, this is helpful for long-term policy systems, environmental change grants, because you know, some of you have 5 years that you're working on this. And so laying that out and sort of seeing what you're going to evaluate along the way is really helpful if you have this theory of change guiding document with you the whole time. As I've said, the theory of change and the work plan and evaluation plan are living documents. And so we would encourage you to set up an annual review with your partners and with your program officers here at the funds to review these annually, or, you know, maybe every other year, and update and edit and plan for next steps and new pathways. Your work adapts over time, the environment we live in and the policy systems and environments we're all working in will change over time. And so you may need to adapt some of your strategies or activities, or create new goals because maybe some of them become, or create new outcomes because maybe some of them become less achievable than they were because of external factors. In particular, why do we want to encourage you to create a theory of change for your MACHHAF funded work? I've been referring to this, but PSE change is hard, and you may not achieve your desired long-term goals and outcomes within your grant period. So you might, you know, all of us here have the goal of reducing, if not eliminating, racial inequities in Massachusetts. Unfortunately, I don't think, given the state of the world, we're going to achieve that goal in the next 5 years, but it's good to have that on your piece of paper to know that that is what you're trying to get to. And so even if it's not eliminating racial inequities, maybe it's something a little closer than that. It's still good to have that. In 10 years, it would be really great if everybody in Massachusetts could afford a home. Even if you know you're not going to get there in this time period, it's good to sort of have that North Star that you can keep your eyes on through the work that you're doing. As I was saying before, the policies and the systems and the environments of your context may change over time in this long scope of the work that you're doing. And so theory of change helps you maintain sort of what were your original intentions and then allow you to adjust those to unforeseen changes in the context. A theory of change can also help you maintain your principles and values. All of you are here because you're doing very principled work and very value-driven work. Those were the projects that you applied for and were funded to do. And so by including your principles and values within your theory of change and the narrative that goes along with it, you can ensure that you are maintaining those values and that new staff and partners adopt and maintain your long-term vision. Again, the theory of change is for you, and the process in a way is just as important as the journey is just as important as the destination, the journey of creating it and revising it. But once you have a theory of change, it's also can be a very effective communication tool for you. And so when you're developing your theory of change, you should think about these various audiences that you can reach. So whether it's within, maybe you work in a larger organization and you have a group that's working on this project, but you're going to need to report back to your executive team or the advisory board of your organization. We just got this big grant from MACHHAF, and here's what we're planning to do. Here's our theory of change for the next 5 years. It can also be very helpful for new staff onboarding, especially people who are more visual, to help sort of see in one screen what is the plan, what is the project they've just signed on for. It can also be a great communication tool for partner organizations and potential partners, for potential future funders, or if you want to add supplementary funding to the work that are somewhat related to the project that you're doing here. A theory of change can show that you've really thought through these things. And it can also be great for reaching out to community members and getting them involved in the work that you're doing. In a sense, a theory of change can be your visual elevator pitch when you're going out in the world and talking to various people and organizations about your project. I think I'm passing back to Megan at this slide.
Yes. Thanks, Hannah. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the steps that would go into developing a theory of change. This might look different for different organizations depending on your project, who your team is, who your audience is, what your goal for using a theory of change might be. But these are just some kind of core, like, structural steps that you want to consider when you're developing your theory of change. You have to bear with me for my metaphor here, but I'm a big reader, and I like to equate theory of change to reading a story. When you read a book, you don't just skip to the end and read the ending. Maybe you do. There's no judgment. But you want to know what has happened along the way. What were those key plot changing activities that got us to that ending? And that's the story that you want to tell with your theory of change, is what were those activities? What was that plot? What happened along the way? And then what's that ending that you're trying to get to? So to that end, to telling that story, the core components of a theory of change are your goals. That's your big lofty ending, the end of your epic story. The activities and strategies that you're taking to get there. What are you actually going to be doing to get there? What is the story along the way? And those outcomes. And outcomes are kind of, what are those measures, those markers along the way that you're looking for to know you're making progress towards that big goal at the end. So I'm going to dive into each of those briefly. So if you don't mind going to the next slide, Hannah. So first step in developing a theory of change is to define your goals. Your goal is the ultimate impact of what you want to achieve in a community. It can be big, it can be broad, it should be inspiring. it's not necessarily something that you're going to achieve within the life of this funding. And that's okay. We know that, like Hannah has been saying, policy systems and environmental change, advancing racial equity, those things take time and they're hard and they're long. So we know that, and you shouldn't let that stop you from setting yourself a big goal for this work. And the thing is, you likely already have set yourself a big goal for this work. So your goals can come from what you included in your project proposal. And you can start there. That's always a good place. If there's something else you want to add or brainstorm with your team, you can also add to them. You will hear us in the future talk about SMARTY goals. And that is an acronym that I'm also going to put in the chat, because being a reader, I like to read things. That helps me. But a SMARTY goal is just a framework for thinking about developing goals that we as a team really like and recommend that you use. And SMARTY stands for S, specific. So your goal should have like a clear, specific element to it. It should M, be measurable, something that you can demonstrate has changed. It should be achievable. R, relevant. T, time bound. There should be some element of time frame to your goal. I, inclusive, so that it includes marginalized groups in the processes, activities, and decision making. And E, equitable. It incorporates elements of fairness and seeks to address systemic injustice, inequity, and oppression. If you don't mind going to the next slide, Hannah. Once you've developed your goals, so you're kind of working backwards when you're developing a theory of change. You start at the end with your goals and then move to your outcomes. The outcome is the intended result of the strategies and activities that you're implementing. So, for example, if my project is to make myself dinner, my goal is that I will be full and happy at the end of dinner. The outcome is that I will have made some food, that I will have eaten the food. And then the strategy and activities is the cooking aspect of things that I'll get into in a second. Outcomes are measurable indicators of your goals. So it's how you know you're making progress towards that ultimate goal that you have. And there's multiple categories of outcomes, but we propose using these three. One is a process outcome. So that's what are you doing along the way as you do your strategies and your activities. What's your short-term outcome? Something that you might think to see movement or to achieve within a year or two within the span of the grant. And then those longer-term outcomes, those might happen towards the end of the funding period or even past the end of the funding period, which again, we completely understand. And that's something that we would expect to see. And then finally, you have your strategies. So again, working backwards. And a strategy is how you're going to achieve those goals and outcomes. So strategies for you all might include program strategies, providing services, doing different sort of advocacy campaigns, building collaborations, doing capacity building training, really any of the things that you all are doing within your work, you should think about them as strategies. So maybe my strategies are that I'm going to pick a recipe and I'm going to go to the grocery store and buy the ingredients I need. So that's my strategies towards my outcome of making dinner, towards my goal of being full and happy. You want to think about your strategies when you're relating to the outcomes. Your strategies should be working towards those long-term outcomes and goals. So the short-term outcomes, the process outcomes, those are things that are happening along the way, but they're not ultimately what your strategies are sort of aimed at. So you're kind of aiming towards those long-term outcomes, you're aiming towards the goal, and then your process outcomes and your short-term outcomes are something that's going to be happening along the way. We go to the next slide. And really, when you're developing a theory of change, you are planning forward and looking backwards. So you want to look towards the future and plan, where is it that I want to be, how I'm going to get there, and then look backwards. How will I know that I have done what I needed to do? How will I know that I have gotten to the place that I want to get into the future? Another way to think about strategies are so that chains. So answering the question of, we're doing this so that this happens, so that that happens. You can see here on this map, for example, this program might be doing strategy X so that outcome Y happens. And then in collaboration, outcome Y with all the other outcomes are being done so that goal Z results, being our ultimate goal. So if you're starting from kind of a really basic starting point with your theory of change, this can be a really helpful exercise to go through with your team, and answering the questions of, we're doing this so that what happens next, and following that logic down that pathway. And I think the next slide is an example of that. Yeah, thanks, Hannah. So the example here is that a strategy, sorry, I need to make it a little bigger for myself. A strategy is increased media coverage of an issue that you are working on. And you're doing that increased media coverage so that public awareness of that issue increases. And you want public awareness of the issue to increase so that policymakers increase their knowledge of and interest in that issue. And you want policymakers to increase their knowledge so that policy change to support the solution can occur. And you want policy change so that organizations of providers offer new or revised services. And you want those new or revised services so that individuals and families can access those services. And you want individuals and families to access those services so that individuals and families are in an improved situation. So with that, you can kind of see the chain and process that's happening. You start with your strategy, you've got your ultimate goal, and all of that so that that's happening along the way are your outcomes that you're looking to achieve. And then we wanted to also show you our example of a theory of change. This is the one that we developed last year, actually, for the Healthy Aging, the Community Health and Healthy Aging Funds. Our original theory of change was developed in 2019. And last year, we decided that it was time for it to be updated. Like Hannah said, these are living documents, and we very much see it that way as well. And in addition to just time passing and needing to update it, the other reason we were hoping to update our theory of change was to be able to better use it as a communication tool. So to better be able to communicate to external partners and external stakeholders, particularly around the overarching impact of the funds and what the funds are doing. We also updated our theory of change with the goal of then using that to update our evaluation plan so that the two documents talked to each other more than they had before. So that was our motivation for updating our theory of change. And the process that we took was we started with our vision and mission, which Hannah has up on the screen here. And in addition to being in the slides that we shared with you, this can also be found on our website in case that's easier for anybody to see. But we started with our mission and vision and identified what our key goals are. So again, starting at the end. And for us, we split our key goals into the key goals for the funds and the key goals for our team doing the work, which is why you see those two separate boxes there. And from there, we brainstormed all of the strategies, all of the pieces that go into achieving those goals, as well as identifying what are the outcomes along the way that we're hoping to achieve. We did that as a team it took a number of conversations. It was not like a one and done process. It was something we really sat with and really worked through together. But we took all that information, and then if you go to the next slide, Hannah, we put it into our theory of change. So you can see that we start with all of our strategies on the, what is to me the left-hand column. There are all the pieces that go into the funds as an entity. So for example, equitable evaluation practices, equitable and trust-based grant making, transparency and accountability. These are all of our strategies that we're bringing into the work, into the funds. And we have first our direct outcomes, which are the pieces of the work that those strategies achieve kind of not necessarily like right away, but like in the very near future. So for example, there are investments that are made in the different funding streams. Then investments are made in communities that traditionally don't receive this kind of funding. So some of those, what the strategies directly result in. Then we have our medium-term outcomes, which are things that we have started to see over the life of the funds, are hoping to see even more of as we work through the next few years. And then finally, our long-term outcomes, which are those, for us, this is the language we used kind of for our big lofty pieces, which having these direct impacts in our big goals here. And you can see our goals, like Hannah said, are big, but there are things that we can kind of trace the story of working towards through the funds. So we wanted to share our theory of change as an example, and talk through our process, just to share kind of where our thinking was, and to say that also this is not just an activity that we're telling you all to do. It's something that we do ourselves as a team. We frequently come back to this document to look at it when we're developing communication tools or thinking about how we're implementing these strategies. We're very frequently coming back to the theory of change. And we hope that the document that you all develop out of today's webinar and in the future is something that you all can also come back to and use as successfully as we feel like we've been able to use ours. And speaking of that, actually, no, I will pass it to Hannah for the next piece. I'm sorry, I was skipping ahead.
Thanks, Megan. So one thing I want to point out is that there are lots of different resources online and from different groups about what is the theory of change, how to develop one. Some of them are very fussy about language and terminology and what they call different components. We are not fussy about that, and we don't want it to be confusing to you, but and so we want to make sure that we describe the different components accurately for those who need help with this. But you know, I just wanted to sort of point out in our document, we're calling things long-term outcomes that others might call goals, and we're calling desired impact, and that might be a goal in someone else's statement. Do what works best for you. So in general, like call things the way that makes sense to you, and create whatever theory of change you create. The goal is to be useful to you, not to be useful to us necessarily. So do what works best for you. I am going to try to pretty quickly go through some additional components, and then please start putting any questions that you might have in the chat. And then we're also going to open up the space in a couple of minutes for sort of group discussion and group questions. So please start getting ready to wake yourselves up and come on camera. So as we've been describing, the main components of the theory of change that we want you to focus on are the goals, the strategies and activities that you will use to get to those goals, and then the outcomes that you expect to achieve from these strategies and activities. As you're working on so that's sort of the core piece. Make sure you include those things. It's also helpful to include some of these additional components, and you don't have to include them all, include what's useful to you. But in going through this journey of developing a theory of change, we're going to talk through a bit some of these other components. So one is, again, depending on whatever terminology that you want to use, your vision, your mission, your values as an organization, and your principles guiding this work. So it's helpful to write those down, again, for this communication tool component, for onboarding new staff, for engaging partners. It's helpful to sort of have that, here's my value statement, here is the sort of morality that guides the work that we're trying to do. Another component is the context that you're working in and whatever assumptions come with that context. Another component that is very helpful as a communication tool on your theory of change is just what's the basic problem you're trying to solve? Who is the population you're aiming to work with, and what is the need that they have for change? And then finally, thinking about what stakeholders and partners you're going to work with along the way over this many years of your work. So a little more specifically, your vision, mission, values, and principles. This is sort of the main purpose and that maybe even loftier than a goal statement, even sort of what is your vision is peace on earth. Your vision is the end of climate change, but something that's really this sort of guiding North Star for you. In particular, for the Massachusetts Community Health and Healthy Aging Funds, we have core pillars that we work with that guide our work and that we expect to guide the work of all of our grantees. And so those pillars are community engagement, it's addressing the social drivers of health and related health outcomes. It's addressing these through looking at the root causes of inequity, leading with dismantling structural and institutional racism and supporting age-friendly domains. And finally, prioritizing and improving health equity in Massachusetts. So you all have these components. That's why you're here in the projects that you propose. But it is helpful to lay out these principles for yourself as you're working on your theory of change to make sure that you're sort of keeping yourself accountable to yourselves and incorporating these aspects of work. For context, this is just helpful to think about what are your assumptions when you see that there is a lack of affordable housing in Massachusetts. What do you think is causing that? What is contributing to that? And that will help you lay out what are the strategies and activities that you need to use to change that state of affairs. So just sort of thinking about what are your basic like causes and effects that you're assuming are existing in the world. This is related to what is the problem or the need that you're addressing. So to just be really clear, even if it's just in a sort of statement at the top of your theory of change document, what's the problem and who is the population that this is affecting that you are specifically aiming to work with on your project. And then this is part of the sort of community engagement, equity, anti-racist practices that we expect you to be using, is thinking about who's already at the table, who should you be inviting to the table in this process, embracing the value of nothing about us without us. And so using the theory of change to make sure that you are being inclusive in your activities and your work as you're starting out. Okay, we just threw a lot at you, and I know some of this is familiar to you all, but we are going to open it up now for any questions and discussion. We hope you have some, and we encourage others of you on the call who have deep experience in this to please chime in with your experiences and input as well to any questions that come up.
Hi, this is the interpreter. Do you mind spotlighting the other interpreter? Her name is Wendy. We're going to switch now. Thank you.
You've done a lot of work. Thank you for staying on this whole time. Can someone grab Wendy? Hi, Wendy. Okay, is there anything that's come up in the chat already, or does anybody want to raise their hand with any questions? Thanks, Juliet.
Let's see.
I see a question about a preferred template. We're going to be sharing with you after the questions a template that some people have found helpful. We'll share a few in a packet. Different people have different learning styles and different approaches that are helpful to them. So we're going to share a few resources with you. For some of you, it might feel overwhelming. You don't have to use them all. We're just sort of trying to be accessible to different learning styles and different things. So we will share that with you after this session, along with a guidance document of expectations. Other questions?
It's not a question, but I just want to say that I appreciate the ability to use the vocabulary and the language that best suits us. I think it's very helpful, the flexibility to be able to, because we all do learn differently and understand words differently, et cetera, et cetera. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I think it's great.
I'm glad to hear that. I mean, we like it too. People seem very like some people are very ordered and this is exactly what this thing is and these are these different components. And if you review a lot of them, there's so much overlap and there's so much people defining the same things using different terms. And so it's whatever works for you, whatever resonates with you. Tarsha asks, please confirm that we have until 11/13 to make any budget changes, and also please clarify requirements regarding program evaluation using in-house resources. Yeah, so I will, I'll take the latter and then I'll ask Albiette, I think, to jump on to answer the first part. So the expectation in your grant agreements is that you have set aside 10% of your total project budget to do evaluation work. So Megan and me and our colleagues, we are part of the evaluation team for the funds. We are responsible for the overarching evaluation of the funds overall. We're here today in our capacity building capacity for the funds. And so we're here as a resource to you, as sort of guides to check in as you do your own evaluation, but you are expected to be conducting your own evaluation of your own projects. We're here as sort of added help, but you are expected to either be hiring a external consultant to help you work on your own program evaluation or using someone in-house to develop these tools, the theory of change and an evaluation plan, and then conduct the evaluation along the way.
Thank you. Just one other clarifying question. So in terms of, being responsible for our own program evaluation, are we required to submit that evaluation document in and at what period, if so?
No, we
Okay.
do not currently require you to do that. We are, and Albiette, I think, can speak to this a bit more in terms of expectations around accountability. we expect updates from you all, and we, you know, expect updates to show that you're making progress, but really we're doing this and requiring this submission now because we think it's a benefit to you and we think it helps your capacity as organizations to achieve your goals and to be sustainable and get funding in the future. But we won't actually be, you know, we're not grading you on anything, and we won't be, it's not a requirement to submit your evaluation to us. I'll
Just,
be, oh,
oh,
Add Megan, and then
I
I'll
just,
follow.
just to like be really distinct, because I could see it could potentially being
Oh.
confusing, is we do ask that you develop and submit an evaluation plan to us. So that's part of the onboarding, and that final package of documents we'll ask you to submit in February. But after that evaluation plan, there's no additional like evaluation submissions. We will ask that you participate in our evaluation activities, which, you know, a preview of coming attractions. Those won't happen for you all until next summer at the earliest. So
And as they previously mentioned, this is a living document. And so where, as it pertains to programmatically, we, program officers on that front will be looking to you for certain things. So in the event, and we can ask for an updated evaluation plan, especially depending upon what happens with your work plan. If there's a shift in activities, which oftentimes happen, where folks have to make adjustments and things of that nature. So when these types of things are happening, we will follow up with you to ensure that those updates are reflected. And I would say too, it's not currently an ask that you resubmit, but your program officer can at any given point ask for that update as well. And then that's something that we'll be looking for in your as you go through your budget line as well when you do budget reports, and some potential other reports that may ask some questions as it pertains to evaluation later on.
Okay, thank you. One more question, just confirming if we have any changes to our budget, we have until November 13th as outlined in the onboarding packet to
Yep,
submit those.
and Chen Chen has confirmed that in the chat. Yes,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
any other questions, sort of big picture about what is the theory of change, or what, how this one might be different than for other projects you've worked on? Okay, if not, I am going to, I think this is, oh, I gotta share my screen again. I'll quickly do a couple of more pieces, and then we are going to send you all into breakout groups. You are going to be randomly assigned with 2 to 3 other people who are on the call today. And our hope is that, one, this is just an opportunity for you all to continue or to start networking with each other. The grantees in other cohorts have learned so much from each other. And so for those of you who are experienced theory of change creators, we really hope you can stay on and provide some guidance. Hopefully the randomness spirits will make some good matches today. But so we hope it's just a place for you all to start talking about what are your goals, what are your objectives, and how are you what are the strategies you're using to try to achieve them. So Megan, is this me still? Okay. I have a couple of templates that we're doing here. These are just very basic and to help guide the conversations that you're about to have with your colleagues. So, you know, this first one is just thinking about a theory of change as a visual metaphor. So and the metaphor is climbing a mountain. And so the top of the mountain is your goal. You're trying to get to the top of the mountain. And so very simply, what are the outcomes you're trying to get to along the way? Like, do you know you're going to get to the first pass or the first what are those what are those called? What backs?
Switchbacks.
Switchbacks. Like you'll get to the first switchback, that's your first outcome. So this isn't even including any of your activities. Like you're not even describing how you're going to hike or whether you're going to use hiking sticks or crampons or whatever. Like you're just saying, here's your goal and here are the outcomes along the way. This one we are going to share with you, I hope in the chat to try that you can try to use during your breakout groups conversations. And so this is a document you can start by putting your principles up here, or you can add those later. And then there's just this place to put your broader goals. What are your big picture things you're trying to achieve? As Megan described, with a theory of change, you want to work backwards. So you want to start at the end point and work back towards today. So you start with your big picture principles, your big picture goals, and then you work backwards to what are the outcomes along the way. And then finally, what are the activities that are going to lead you logically, you think, to these outcomes? And so in your breakout groups, we would encourage you to focus here, to get on the like broader goals statements. If you have time, jump into a few of the outcomes, but really sort of focus on that level and getting that on paper. We are going to skip the example, and then this is just a little bit of to help you envision what we're recommending for your process. So one is, don't do this on your own. Get together with your colleagues, get together with any partner organizations. Maybe you reached out to somebody, you know, 6-8 months ago when you were developing your application, whenever that was, and said, we're doing this project, come join us. This is a great time to re-engage them and say, let's get together and have a meeting and work on a theory of change together. Great opportunity to like get someone else from your organization who works on a different project but is thoughtful and has experience, and pull them into the room and start talking with them. And then these discussions should include brainstorming, you know, maybe time for individual reflection and then coming back and sharing, refining your thoughts if needed, voting on your long-term goals and outcomes if there's any debate about what are the best prizes to keep your eyes on. And then starting to think about operationalizing, like how are you actually defining your ambitious goal terms and outcome terms that you've listed. I am going to save this for sending out afterwards for you all as sort of questions to ask within your group, and then also these reflection questions of like, once you've laid out your goal, are there logical linkages? What are your assumptions? But these you can refer to later. So for now, where is my stop share button? I have been sharing my screen, haven't I? Oh, here's my stop share. Okay. So if we're ready, we are going to put you into breakout groups. We'll bring you all back around 11:25 to just finish up, do some next steps and show you those timelines and deadlines again. But we ask that you go introduce yourself, describe your project a bit, and then go around and give each other a chance to, in describing your project, it's a great opportunity to start laying it out in this terminology of goals and outcomes. If it makes sense in your group, you could even ask each other to use that template to sort of write things down as goals, outcomes, activities, principles, all those components as you're talking. So if you want to introduce yourself and then start talking about the work that you're doing, if your counterpart in the group wants to be taking notes in that template at the time, that could be a really helpful way to do it. Or you can just more casually use the time to meet each other and talk about your work, but you will be self-facilitated. Please chat us if you have any questions and want us to jump in on your group, and we might jump in on a few groups just to say hi and see how it's going. But otherwise, you guys are on your own and to make new friends, we hope. Ariel, are we good?
I think so. I'll go ahead and open all the rooms.
Oh, and Jamia and the CHIP grantees, you all are a bit different in terms of thinking about theories of change, since you already have your CHIP framework that you're working in. And so CHIP grantees and Jamia will be going into a different space on their own.
And if you are a CHIP person that I didn't catch that needs to be in room 1 with the other CHIP grantees, please send me a DM or anyone on the HRA staff, and we'll make sure to move you over. All right. Thanks, everyone. I'll open the rooms.
Look at the dates again.
Thanks, Hannah. So next steps for completing your theory of change draft. We would suggest revisiting the application that you submitted and using that as a place to start filling in those goals and outcomes and activities into a theory of change template. You can use the one that we shared today. You can use one of the ones that we will share after this, or you can use something entirely different, whatever is going to work best for you and your team. We would then say to invite your team and your partners into a brainstorming session. Again, I would say don't expect this to be a one meeting and then you're done kind of thing. Plan for it to take a little bit of time and some conversation. And then you are welcome and invited to attend our Theory of Change office hours, where members of our team will be available to answer questions or work through any challenges that you're having, and we'll also create some space for some peer sharing and peer learning in those sessions. And then we ask that you submit your first draft of the Theory of Change by November 13th. That draft will go to your program officer and to the general Massachusetts Community Health and Healthy Aging Funds email, which I'm going to put in the chat. And we'll repeat all of this in our follow-up email as well. We're not grading your submissions. We're not judging them. We're just going to be reviewing them and providing some feedback to the draft that you share. Hopefully that is useful and can help it get to that next iteration, and it'd be a good launching point for your initiative. And if you don't mind going to the next slide. So these are those dates. Again, these are in the slides we're sending out, so you all have a copy of this. But as a reminder, I mixed up the dates. I apologize. The draft of the Theory of Change is due on October 18th. And our feedback will be back to you by November 13th. So I apologize for getting those two dates switched. Upcoming is the work plan webinar. So that will happen a few days after your Theory of Change draft is due. And then following that, the evaluation plan webinar on November 18th. That will be a few days after the draft or the work plan is due. And then you'll have until February 21st to submit your final package of materials. You go to the next slide. I think that is it in terms of content. If you have questions about the Theory of Change or anything related to the evaluation, Ariel Slivka, who you have seen putting you into small groups today, is the contact person on our team. She will help make sure that your question gets to the right person, or she's also able to answer your question herself. So please do reach out to her or your program officer. They can also help kind of get you to the right person on our team for your questions. And with that, I think that's all we have. So thank you all so much for spending part of your Monday with us. And we look forward to seeing you at a Theory of Change office hours or a future webinar. You'll see a lot of us in the coming years. So thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.